So let's talk about AI today. I think AI is the ultimate example of the circle of control. But I also want to start by saying I'm going to talk about AI having no clue and not being an expert. But the funny part is sometimes that is where the gold is, because being too smart, being too in it, being too involved in it can make you a little bit, not blind, but not seeing the other side of it. I've learned sometimes when you just apply the most practical, common sense approach to things, you can actually make a lot of sense out of it, even though you don't understand all the technical stuff. I'm using ChatGPT almost daily. I love it. It's a great tool. But the reason it's not going to be the end of the world, in my opinion, the reason it's actually going to be a wonderful thing is because, first of all, we have to start with optimism, right? You've heard me talk about this a million times. To me, if you don't start by believing something, of course, you can't bring it to fruition. So you have to start by having an optimistic attitude. AI, no different than other amazing inventions and technologies, will temporarily scare, it will amaze, and then it will settle in and find its place in the world and for how we all are going to use it. Not will we get through this, but how will we get through this? Not will I be able to adapt or am I done? But how will I adapt? How will I thrive through this big change? And it's always different. When people say it's different this time, of course it's different. Everything's different, but a lot of the principles remain. So I think that, big change normally takes bravery, but now a lot of people are going to be forced to be doing what they're meant to do. Because if I'm an accountant, for example, and all of a sudden, I'm not that happy with my life, I know it's not who I'm really meant to be, but guess what? I've been an accountant for 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, or I went to school for this and now I'm doing this. It's a lot harder. It takes a lot more courage to, dump everything you've worked for and do something new. And I think that's why a lot of people end up staying in a place that isn't what they're really meant to do, that isn't their highest and best use. One of my tattoos is called Ikigai. It's a Japanese philosophy of, what are you really meant to do? What are you here on this planet for? What is your highest and best purpose? And I've always been in search of that, which is why I've done so many different things, from being a chef and a restaurant owner to a realtor to now doing these podcasts and being a book author, because I'm always seeking what's my highest and best use. To give more than I take, to live a life that I'm proud of, that I'm excited about. So what's going to happen, I think, with AI is it's going to force people to go, okay, guess what? I can't continue being the CPA. I'm not beating up on CPAs. My top line belief is that most positions will still be there, and I'll get to that in a second. But if you're not going to be able to keep being what you're being, because AI will replace that, first of all, I think we should celebrate it, because, no different than, manufacturing lines of, Ford and of the day, nobody wants to go backwards now and stop having, things be mass produced in an efficient, effective way that's cost effective, that's a better way to do it. To hang on to the worst way of doing something just to hang on doesn't ever seem like it's going to end up somewhere good. You can't force these things, you got to go with the times. One of my favorite quotes I've always talked about with Karl Lagerfeld, from Chanel, that died, but he managed to be a fashion icon till into his 90s, because his quote was, "I'm open to everything, because as soon as you're closed to your time is over." And I love that. So it's not about how do we fight this? How do we stop this? How do we be miserable about this? But how do we adapt it? How do we make our lives better with it and the lives of those people around us? So what's going to happen is people are going to be forced to go, okay, I can't be that. And this is what excites me. I've always said, who would you be if you weren't who you thought you were, right? You get into these roles. Well, now you're going to be forced to say, okay, I can't do my, job X anymore. So what am I really meant to do? What do I really want to do? And I think the exciting part of AI is that it's going to help people find what they're meant to do. And a lot of what they're meant to do, I think, will be creative. You hear those stories all the time, right? The guy was on Wall Street, or the girl was, in in IT, and, after decades of being unhappy, they finally quit and they started the greatest chocolate company that ever existed. And you're like, it's a great story. And they had the courage to make that huge pivot, but most people, that's really hard to do. So if you're forced to do it, you're going to have to make that pivot. Like, what am I really meant to do? And I'm very much down the middle when it's, when we talk politics and stuff. So I don't say this because I'm a socialist, but I do love the concept or the idea. One of the other things to look forward to is maybe the government, we as a people, will come up with a great way to give people that need it a regular, monthly stipend or whatever you want to call it, so that you don't have to worry about your family, your food, your shelter, and it gives you the freedom to do what you're meant to do and add value to this world. So you're going to stop and go, wow, I can be creative. I can do this thing. And what are the things that are going to be the most valued? To me, connection is what will always be the most important and the most valued thing as human beings. We need connection. Connection solves so much. When we are together, when we are interacting, when we are laughing, when we are learning, when we are thriving together in person, it's the greatest thing. So I think in-person events, seminars, going to presentations, going to workshops, whether it's making jewelry or making furniture or book clubs, things that are creative, things that are in person, will be more valued than ever. So that's going to be an incredible opportunity. And, for those of you who want to continue doing what you do, this is the ultimate moment, the ultimate test for you, right? Because if you say no, in my example, a CPA or a legal assistant or, on Wall Street, they say all the researchers, those jobs are going to be gone because, AI can do it faster. But guess what? There's no such thing as every position going away, and there's no such thing of all positions in that category going away. Some people will remain because there are still going to need to be people to double check AI's work, to interpret that work. So my challenge to you is, if you really love what you're doing and you're worried that AI is going to take it away, get better. Be better. This is what I've been doing in real estate for years, and we continue to work less and make more and have better relationships and have more wonderful client interactions and get our clients the best result, because my wife and I are focused on constantly being better. Not how do we do more deals? Let's do, especially in real estate, it's such a thing to focus on the top line. How many deals did you do this year? What was your gross production? We're focused on what is our client's bottom line. What is the best result financially, emotionally, in every way for our clients? And when you keep focusing on that and finding ways to deliver that better, you keep getting better, and you keep, funny enough, getting busier, and you can be choosier, right? You don't need more to fill the gaps if you're better. And real estate's a perfect example. I mean, I'd rather do, 3 deals this month, 1 deal this month, whatever the number is you want to pick. I mean, many realtors do 3 deals a year, but I'd rather do less deals and blow the client away, have more free time for what I want to do for my family, and I just keep getting better with my skills. And that extra time I have, I'm not stressed. I've taken care of myself. So now I can study negotiation. I can study the market. I can network with other realtors. I can keep reading books. I can keep listening to podcasts, finding ways to be better and better and better, and in ways that normally you might not consider, right? Like if you're a realtor, most realtors just think, how do I get more clients and close more deals? But I think of it as, how do I become a better therapist, if you will, psychologist? At the same time that I'm a great advisor, a confidant, how do I find that line between being a friend and having empathy, but not to the point where it then doesn't serve the client? But you don't have time to think about all those things and study all those things if you're just trying to do more. So if you want AI to not replace you, be better, get better, find ways to get better. The other exciting thing is with AI is, again, I don't think everyone's going to get decimated. I think what's going to happen is maybe you'll only be needed 20 hours a week, and maybe salaries or hourly rates will adjust to where you're only working 20 hours, but you're getting paid for 30 hours. Okay, it's not as much as when you were working 40 or 50 hours, but guess what? Your quality of life just went way up. Okay, you're making a little bit less, but you have way more free time to what? To go make some furniture and sell that as a separate business, to be a speaker, to write a book, to make jewelry, to, pivot into all these jobs, by the way, that AI is going to end up creating that we aren't even aware of yet, or at least I'm not. But I'm aware of the obvious ones, right? If you're in anything to do with energy, electricity, you're going to be busy supporting AI. If you're any kind of a, industrial builder, you're going to be busy doing warehouses, data centers, technology for cooling these massive processors. Somebody's going to, invent a way to cool these things more efficiently because supposedly, the amount of water and power it takes is insane. So, and then that will, require a bunch of new people working on that technology to provide that to the AI world. So again, to throw up the flag and give up is nuts, because believe it, you have to believe there's always a way through, and it's usually a more exciting way. Just like all this technology we have, right? I don't find social media to be negative in any way at all, because my feed is full of joy. My feed is full of things that inspire me, people that inspire me. Your feed is your outlook on life. What's in your feed is probably what you've been clicking on, reading, and focusing on. So if you don't like the feed, or you want to blame AI, social media, maybe take a minute, to own it and say, maybe I need to stop liking those things, stop clicking on those things. Maybe I need to start searching other things that bring more joy and happiness and expertise into my life. And that's another part of this AI change as well. Some people are going to get mad at me for this probably, but I think there's a huge opportunity, and AI is possibly helping us be forced into that opportunity to really take ownership. It's not AI is putting me out of a job. It's I'm putting me out of a job because I'm not able to pivot, or because I'm not as good as I should be at my job, or because I haven't dedicated myself to it, or because I haven't really taken the time to do my personal constitution that I learned on Jeffrey Saad's podcast, The Circle, to see who I really am and what I really want to do in this world. If you haven't done all those things and you don't have clarity, then, don't feel like a victim. Don't blame the outside world, because that's not going to help you. I've always been a big fan. I can't remember where I read it. Like I always say, most of what I'm saying, I'm just a parrot. I'm repeating it. I'm owning it. I've made it part of my soul, these things, to become a better person and to hopefully share it with you to make your life better. But one of the things I read, ages ago was that it's until you accept responsibility for everything in your life, you won't have the power to change anything. So I'm going to take responsibility for the frickin' weather. Obviously, it's not my fault, but if I sit here and focus on the weather causing my problems, then I'm not in solution mode. I'm not in the right frame of mind. So if you haven't already done that, try to own that. Forget about being right, as you've heard in past podcasts. I think being right is one of the most worthless things on earth, unless it's like, hey, I'm going to be right about we shouldn't cross this bridge because it's about to collapse. That's different. But those are the exceptions. Most time when people are trying to be right, it's the ego. It's just, I need to be right. And, I know this and you don't, and it feels like a short-term rush, like a shot of, crack. I'm right. And it feels so rewarding. I Googled it. See, but that doesn't help anybody or anything except your ego. So I think that ownership is really important. I don't think it's going to be as scary as most people think. I think it's really going to be an incredible opportunity. I think, also just AI in general, I don't think everyone should be worried that you're going to be replaced, because, don't forget, you still have to be the one to prompt AI. If as a chef is a great example, right? If I go to AI and say, give me the greatest recipe for mac and cheese, or give me the greatest recipe for bolognese. That's something I was just making this morning, so I'll use that example. Give me a recipe for bolognese. Sure, AI is going to give you the recipe. It'll probably even give you, hey, what are some of the typical pitfalls? But if you don't have the sensibility as an experienced cook or chef to see that the heat's a little too high and I need to turn it down because I want slow browning of that meat, I want it to really slowly crackle and get golden, then I'm going to add the veggies, because if you add the veggies too soon, they release their water and you're never going to get color. And then I take half the meat out and leave it raw. And then I stir it in at the end after reducing the milk and the tomato paste and the red wine and the tomato sauce, because then it gives it a creamier meat texture as it simmers very slowly versus if I had browned all the meat together. I mean, all that stuff, there's no way AI is going to kick that out and make you, Joe Schmo, a great chef. It's just not. So, anybody with skills are still going to be valued because, if you don't know the right question to ask, if you don't know how to fix it, like my knee surgeon said to me a few years ago when I got my, knee replacement, he said, I could probably teach you to do this knee replacement like in a week. I really could. He goes, but what I could never teach you without you going to medical school and spending decades learning and doing it, making mistakes, is what to do when something goes wrong. So yeah, AI is, here's how you open up the incision, here's how you put in the metal. But the second you hit an artery or a vein on accident and blood starts spewing, you don't even have time to AI it because, the patient's going to bleed out. So, real estate, same thing, right? I know realtors that are using AI for comp analysis for the client. And I'm sure the good ones are using it as a head start and then adjusting it. But you can't forget, and I'm sure you've all read this. I'm not saying anything, again, genius that nobody's heard, but I'm hoping you're hearing it in a new way or in a slightly different way that helps you internalize it and do something good with it. But, it's the process that makes it work, right? When I go through the comps for a client, even when I know it really well, even when it's an area we're like experts in and I know it like the back of my hand, I still get so much out of it when I go click on each house, remind myself of the pictures, even if I've seen the house. And that's another example. If you haven't seen the house, pictures are not the same thing as being there. You don't get the energy of the house. You don't take in the floor plan, how the sun is coming up and down across the house, all these little things. So when you put together a comp analysis, and you've seen the houses, going through all that and then summarizing it for the client is a totally different thing than just, hey, AI, tell me, with this address, what are the houses that are most comparable in this area, price per square foot, selling price. And it also can't take in the subtleties. I call it tribal knowledge, the things that you can't Google. There will always be things in life that are not searchable. They have to be learned. You've been in the neighborhood. You understand that school's about to open or close. You understand how the sun rises and sets. You understand, the traffic patterns. These are things that are so visceral. As I've even said with Google for a decade, I've said, who cares if you can Google it? We as experts are the truth filters. We take that information that anybody could get, and then it's up to us as a wonderful professional serving people to translate that information and have it be the truth filter of it. When I do these real estate emails or summaries, it is ridiculous how many versions of what the market's doing I could give you. Up, down, inventory up, down, sales volume up, down, price per square foot up, down, averages, medians. Nothing is average. So I can give you 3 different versions of whatever I want to because there's data out there to support it, but they're not valuable unless I understand which version affects your listing, your house that you're selling, or the house you want to buy, what affects it the most. That's the power, right? Because if I just tell you, oh gosh, this house is priced way high for the neighborhood, look at the report, that AI gave me, I could be doing you a huge disservice because you're going to pass on the house, somebody else buys it. Guess what? It was meant to sell for more and it ends up selling for more because you can't price emotions, right? I always say I've never actually sold a house. A client walks into a house and they either feel it or they don't. They either want to live there and raise their kids and have their parties, whatever it is there, or they don't. I can't force that. And even if I could convince somebody, which I wouldn't want to, they're going to end up changing their mind or being regretful or being unhappy with me. And then I didn't do my job. So, the point being, another example is like, a Sherpa. These Sherpas I've always had so much respect for, because all these people summit these mountains in Nepal or everywhere else, and it feels like a personal victory. I did it. But most of them would admit to you, except for a handful, that, the Sherpa is the one. They're the ones that guided them. They're the ones that carried half their stuff, if not all of it. They're the ones that know which path to take based on what the weather's doing and when to not go forward. And even they get caught. But again, how could AI ever give you that kind of learned visceral information? So think about that. And, I think that there will always be a huge demand. That's the other thing. I think there will always be a niche demand for what's quote unquote old, right? When digital cameras came out, oh my gosh, photography is dead. All these photographers, it's over, and then what happens, as we all know, all of a sudden photography with a regular old fashioned camera becomes the coolest thing ever and in demand. And those photographers are getting paid more for what they do. And then, people want black and white on top of it. So not just, not digital, but not color, so there's always going to be that niche. Imagine this. Imagine you start a business, whatever it is, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, where AI has really, landed in the place it's going to be more or less. And you promote yourself as, we use no AI. Oh my gosh, you're going to be like this in demand, company. We have double the amount of employees. I went to a coffee shop yesterday and there was one guy working, and to his credit, he had a nice smile and he was doing his best, but it was a joke. It was two people in front of me and it was like, 18 minutes to get an espresso. Now that was a secondary opportunity to just be peaceful, which I was, and to not quote unquote be waiting, right? Accept the present moment for what it is. I was doing my Spanish on my phone. I was talking to the guy in front of me about the tea he chose, turned it into a lovely moment. But let's face it, at the end of the day, a lot of people want to get in and out, and you're not going to do more business by having one person working and getting nothing done. But why are they doing that? Because of labor costs probably, or maybe somebody called in sick. So that just makes you want robots, right? That just makes you want AI, because if this one person, if they can't afford to serve me, then I'd rather have it be automated, right? But what about a business where you double the amount of employees so that not only can you serve people quickly, but the employees can have chit chat with every single guest because it feels good. And that's the connection. And in a world where everything is going to become robotic and automated and without connection, what a great opportunity to have connection and efficiency. And I'm guessing that business will ultimately do really well, or maybe even make more than a similar business fully leaning into tech, because it'll be missed. It'll be wanted, that interaction. So just know that if you're good at what you do and you're determined to do it because it's who you believe you are, and you keep getting better at it, you will have an incredible niche, So, and finishing up, summarizing, I just, more than ever, this is a time to be in the circle of control, right? Ultimately, everything I'm saying, blah, 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 could be worthless. It could be right on. Who knows? But either way, it's outside my control. What's in my control is all the things that I've just spoken of, right? I can get better. I can be optimistic. I can look for the niches and the ways that I will adapt to AI, and that will all be better. And it's also, which is going to be my next podcast, I'm really excited about this next one, recapping Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. Because once again, this is what's going on right now. You can fight it or you can embrace it and be better. It's the now. That's all there will ever be. Whatever AI is going to do in the future, quote unquote, doesn't even exist, because it will exist in the now. It'll just be a future day that you are in the present moment when that day comes. It's always the now. And if you can operate in the now, you have so much free time. you have so much less anxiety. So we'll talk about it in the next one. Thanks for listening. Have a beautiful day. And don't be afraid of AI. You will thrive.